"Boss, marry my ugly daughter or leave." The cowboy agreed. When he lifted the veil, he was shocked. When the cowboy Ethan Ward rode into the frontier settlement of Red Mesa, he expected nothing more than a place to rest his horse, patch his boots, and move on toward the mining towns where good pay waited for men who didn't fear dust, danger, or loneliness. What he didn't expect was that the local cattle baron, Boss Calder, feared by outlaws and ranchers alike, would summon him straight into his mansion the moment Ethan walked through the saloon doors. Calder's men had watched him arrive, whispering about the cowboy who once faced a band of raiders alone and lived to tell the tale, and now the boss wanted him for a job. Ethan followed the guards inside, noting how Calder's estate felt more like a fortified camp than a home. Wooden beams reinforced with iron, horses restless in the stables, and guards pacing the verandas. Calder himself sat at a long, polished table, fingers drumming, his face built of age, anger, and authority. Without the slightest courtesy, Calder told Ethan he needed a protector for a daughter who he claimed was too unfortunate-looking to attract a husband and too rebellious to remain safe. If Ethan took on the duty, Calder promised him land, cattle, and a future, something few wandering cowboys dared even dream of. But then Calder leaned forward with a voice that cut like bone. "Marry my ugly daughter or leave." The room grew still. Ethan didn't know whether the man was joking or testing him, so he simply stared back, feeling every eye in the room pressing against his spine. Ethan wasn't the marrying kind, but he also wasn't the type who cowered. He asked why Calder needed someone like him, and the boss explained that his daughter had been raised partly among the Apache, hidden away for her protection after raiders targeted his estate years earlier. Her time there, he claimed, had changed her, made her strong-willed, unrefined, and difficult in ways that frightened suitors. Calder insisted that only a man with unwavering courage, steady judgment, and the will to keep her safe could be trusted with her future. Ethan sensed that there was far more to the story. But when a man like Calder demanded something, refusing could mean disappearing in the desert without a trace. Ethan negotiated only one thing. He would meet the girl first, not judge her by rumors from fearful men. Calder agreed too quickly, and Ethan understood that whatever he was walking into wasn't a proposal, but a trap wrapped in desperation. They rode out the next morning, Calder's men surrounding Ethan not like escorts, but like reminders. The desert stretched wide, the trail carved through land scarred by old conflicts between settlers and tribes. As they approached an Apache camp, Ethan realized the truth. Calder wasn't simply offering a marriage. He was forcing a reunion between two worlds that didn't trust each other. The Apache chief greeted Calder with a stiffness that spoke of debts unfulfilled, but Calder brushed past greetings and demanded his daughter. She stepped forward slowly, dressed in traditional Apache clothing, her black hair long and unbound, her posture proud, though her face was half covered by a ceremonial bandana. Ethan didn't see an ugly daughter, just a quiet, guarded woman whose eyes held storms no one had bothered to understand. Calder insisted on a marriage ritual right there, claiming it was the safest way to ensure she remained protected from enemies, hunting his ranch. The Apache looked uneasy with the haste, but the chief finally nodded, declaring that if this union ensured peace and safety for the girl, they would not stand in the way. Ethan noticed the girl's hands trembled ever so slightly, not out of fear but restraint, like someone prepared to run if she sensed betrayal. As Ethan stood before her, Calder's voice echoed behind him. "Lift the veil so you can accept your choice." Ethan hesitated, realizing that the situation had layers of truth he hadn't been told. But he reached forward anyway. The moment his fingers touched the cloth, the Apache warriors subtly shifted, watching for any disrespect. Any sign of fear, any threat? Ethan paused again, sensing the weight of every gaze on him, then lifted the bandana in one slow motion. What he saw made his breath stop, not out of shock at ugliness, but because the girl beneath the veil was strikingly beautiful, her features sharp yet soft, her expression fierce yet wounded, her eyes burning with intelligence and untold stories. She was nothing like Calder's description. She was nothing like what anyone had implied. Ethan felt a jolt in his chest, not of attraction alone, but of confusion. Why had Calder lied? Why had he painted his daughter as a burden, when she was clearly someone extraordinary? Before Ethan could speak, the girl whispered a single warning without looking away from him. "Don't trust the man who brought you here." And in that moment, Ethan understood that he hadn't been summoned to save the girl. He had been positioned as a pawn in a story far older and darker than any rumor in Red Mesa. Ethan stood frozen after the girl's whispered warning. Her eyes locked on his with an urgency that cut deeper than any threat he had ever faced. Calder barked orders behind them, pushing the ceremony forward, but Ethan's instincts sharpened. The Apache chief stepped between Calder and his daughter, clearly sensing the tension, and stated that no union would proceed unless the woman agreed. Calder tried to strong-arm him, but the chief's warriors shifted closer, making it clear that even a powerful rancher couldn't bully them on their own land. The girl finally spoke aloud, introducing herself as Naili, and said she would decide her own fate. Her voice carried a depth of authority shaped by two cultures, one that had tried to own her, and another that had taught her freedom. Calder insisted Ethan was her best chance at survival, claiming enemies sought her because of land rights secretly tied to her name, and that without a husband capable of protecting her, she would be targeted by bandits and rival ranchers. But when Calder spoke, Ethan noticed Naili's jaw tighten, her fists clench slightly at her sides, and her gaze flickered to the chief as if confirming unspoken truths. Ethan turned to Calder and demanded honesty. Calder answered with half-truths wrapped in urgency. That raiders wanted her, that she was safer married, that Ethan owed him for allowing him into Red Mesa unharmed. Ethan cut him off, finally asserting that he would not marry anyone without her free will. The chief seemed relieved at Ethan's words and invited Ethan into his tent to speak privately. Naili followed without waiting for permission, a decision that made even the chief smile faintly. Inside, the chief revealed the real story. Calder had once made an agreement with the Apache, hiding Naili with them after his ranch was attacked, but he had never returned to honor his promise of peace or support. Naili grew strong, skilled, and respected among the Apache, but when Calder suddenly demanded her back, the chief feared he intended to use her as a tool to legitimize land he had no rightful claim to. The raiders Calder spoke of were not hunting Nayeli. They were Calder's rivals who wanted to expose his lies. Nayeli added that Calder wanted a husband for her not to protect her but to control her inheritance, since she legally held the rights to a massive stretch of land. If she married someone loyal to him, Calder could rule through them. Ethan listened carefully, not speaking until the chief finished. He then asked Nayeli directly what she wanted. She met his eyes without hesitation. She wanted freedom from Calder's manipulation, protection for the Apache who had sheltered her, and a chance to live on her own terms. She didn't expect Ethan to help, but she warned him again. Calder would not allow refusal. As if summoned by their discussion, shouts erupted outside. Calder's men had grown impatient, and one of them tried to drag Nayeli from the tent. Ethan reacted first, grabbing the man's arm and twisting it behind his back, forcing him to release her. The camp erupted into chaos as Calder's men aimed rifles. Apache warriors drew bows, and the chief raised his hand to prevent bloodshed. Calder accused the Apache of poisoning Ethan's mind, claiming he was being deceived. Ethan stepped forward, unholstering his weapon but pointing it at the ground as a sign he wanted clarity, not war. He told Calder he would not marry Nayeli under force and would not let Calder take her unless she chose to go. Calder's face twisted with rage, and in a desperate act, he ordered his men to seize her. But before they could move, Nayeli stepped in front of Ethan and declared loudly that she refused to return with Calder, refused the marriage he tried to arrange, and refused to be treated as an object. The Apache formed a protective circle around her, their unity unmistakable. Calder realized he had lost control and, in anger, drew his gun. Ethan moved faster. In one fluid motion, he knocked Calder's hand aside, the gunshot firing harmlessly into the dirt. Apache warriors disarmed Calder's men, forcing them to retreat. Calder, humiliated and furious, glared at Ethan and Nayeli. He warned that without his protection, both would be hunted, but Ethan finally understood the truth. Calder needed Nayeli far more than she needed him. The Apache chief stepped forward, declaring that Nayeli was free to live where she chose and that anyone seeking to harm her would face the entire tribe. Ethan turned to Nayeli, asking what she planned to do now. She looked toward the horizon, then back at him with a calm certainty. She said she would return to her rightful land, restore what Calder tried to steal, and build a life under her own authority. Ethan offered to ride with her, not as a husband forced by fear, but as a man who respected her strength. She accepted the offer with a faint smile, understanding the choice was theirs alone. As they rode away together, leaving Calder to the consequences of his greed, Ethan realized that the shock of lifting her veil wasn't discovering beauty, it was discovering truth, courage, and a woman far stronger than any lie told about her. Together they would face whatever came next. not as prisoner and protector, but as allies riding toward a future written by their own hands.